All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We know a lot of uncertainty right now for families, and that's even more true for parents of children in special education programs. We are going to try to cover a lot of ground in the next hour, and we do have some great guests, some fantastic guests who are going to offer their insight and answer your questions.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate you all being with us this evening. We want to thank our panelists for joining us tonight as well. We're going to introduce each of them individually and let them provide a brief statement to open up their conversation. Please welcome, first off, Dr. Dina Hill, Executive Director of Student Support Services with Fort Bend ISD. Dr. Hill, your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Keith and Christine and KPRC. We appreciate the opportunity and so glad you included Fort Bend ISD in this communication this evening. You know, we have to work with our parents and our community members and work collaboratively as we bring our kids back to school. So we're happy to be in this conversation and hopefully to answer questions and partner with our families as we return.
All right, Dr. Hill, thank you. And next we have Pam McLean, Executive Director of Special Services with Deer Park ISD.
Yes, thank you all. I just want to thank KPRC for hosting this. It's a great opportunity for us to discuss and answer questions for our parents and members in our school districts, as well as surrounding community regarding special education and during this crazy time of COVID. And it's an honor to be on the panel with two special education experts, Dr. Hill and Nicole Roberts, and I appreciate the opportunity for our district to participate.
Pam, thank you. And next up is Nicole Roberts, the Director of Special Education with Alief ISD. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And again, Keith and Christine, KPRC, thank you for having me on the panel. I'm excited to share any expertise and advice and just best practices for parents, community, and we all have to partner together, like Dr. Hill said, and we are one. In Alief, we have our new hashtag is One Alief, and as special educators, I really believe that we are all in this together.
All right, indeed. Thank you so much. And next we have Dr. Victoria Reagan, pediatrician and Vice President of Women's and Children's Services at Children's Memorial Hermann Hospital. Doctor?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, KPRC and Keith and Christine, for having me on this panel tonight. Being a pediatrician, of course, getting kids back to school in a safe and healthy way, and especially for parents who have children that have special needs, I'm honored to be on this panel to help answer those questions and hopefully help you make that decision to get your child back into school.
Thank you. And we're also joined tonight by licensed professional counselor and a national certified counselor, Dr. Shana D. Lewis, with Clinical Director of Living Well Professional Counseling Services. Thanks for joining us tonight as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine, Keith, KPRC. I am extremely excited for the opportunity to have this conversation. I want to thank all the parents and those who are in attendance, because it says to me that your children matter to you. I'm here to speak from the mental health aspect, the emotional well-being of our children and our parents and our educators. All three need to be in a space of having great mental health. So I'm excited to have the conversation with you this evening.
Yeah, we're glad all of you are here for sure. Thank you so much. And now we do have to cover a few house rules. All participants will remain muted throughout the conversation, but we do want to hear from you. So you will be allowed to submit your questions in the comment section.
And also, if you're comfortable being in front of the camera, you can also ask a panelist directly a question live. All you have to do is use that raise your hand feature in the comment section. Also, we ask that you remain cordial and respectful at all times. And we're going to first address questions that were submitted via email and then answer questions that you, the participants, are submitting tonight.
Yeah, so we're going to get our special education specialists from the school districts and Dr. Lewis in a few minutes. We're going to get to them, but we want to quickly start with Dr. Victoria Reagan to address the unique challenges right now impacting parents getting assessments and diagnosis for their children. From your medical perspective, what is your advice to families who may be unsure of exactly where to begin?
So first, start with your pediatrician or family doctor and have that conversation as to what your concerns are for your child, because they can really be a resource to help direct you where to go next to get that evaluation for your child. We know it's a little more difficult and challenging right now, but there are ways to have it done, and we're here to help you and guide you through that process.
Thank you. And our first question is coming from Jennifer G. This is Deer Park ISD. This is for Pam. Pam, she asked, if schools have to go virtual for everyone, how will IEP goals be met for individuals when online class will be for the entire class?
Well, first of all, we hope that's not going to happen. But if the entire class has to go virtually, we do recommend providing the services that are currently on the services page. We have outlined an instructional plan for our special education teachers, paraprofessionals, reviewed those plans, how they can best provide support. There are different ways to do it. Breakout sessions during a virtual lesson is one way. Having office hours for students to check in with either special education teachers or paraprofessionals to seek additional guidance would be available for them at that point.
Okay. All right, this next one is for Dr. Hill, Fort Bend ISD. This comes from Nakedra W. And she asks, how is Fort Bend ISD meeting the needs of special education students who are online?
Well, and I think that Pam mentioned some of this already. And so, I would say that most of the services that are in a student's ART or IEP can be implemented online as far as accommodations and modified curriculum. However, if there are services that a child is not they're not being successful online, and a parent feels like this isn't working, if it's too much synchronous time or that face-to-face time and the child's starting to fall apart, then you can call an ARD meeting. I would suggest you start with your child's teacher and you talk about, things aren't working well and what do we need to adjust things to ensure that the student is able to successfully access that curriculum online.
Thank you for that. And this next question is coming from Kelly C. for Alief ISD. So Nicole, this question is for you. How will IEPs look during virtual instruction? And how often are students supported by special education educators during in-class support time? So if a student has 150 hours per week of in-class support, say in math.
So IEPs will remain the same during virtual or face-to-face instruction. So IEPs are based on a student's need, and those needs may look different in the virtual environment, but the student still has needs related to and are addressed in the IEP. One thing we've talked about, especially with our in-class support, is exactly what that support's going to look like. So the student should continue to receive the same minutes that were ARTed in the paperwork. However, it may look differently. We're doing a lot of training and a lot of support for teachers on preparing and advanced supports for students. So if a student is in a live lesson, what can we do ahead of time to prepare the student for their learning time so that they're prepared? And that might be pre-teaching vocabulary, providing visual supports ahead of time so the child is familiar with the content in order to participate actively in the class.
All right, Dr. Lewis, this one is for you. This comes from, I don't have a name with this one, but the question is, how can parents support? It's a broad question, but one that a lot on the minds of a lot of parents. How can parents support the emotional needs of their children right now?
That is a big question, Keith. So there's a lot of answers to that. So the first place that I go is listen to your child. A lot of times children's thoughts and their voices get muted because grown-ups got their own stuff going on. So I'm encouraging my parents, slow down first, stop, talk to your child, ask them, how are they doing? How was your day? Don't accept okay and good. Those are not answers. On a scale of 1 to 10, A, B, C, F, what grade do you give to the day? What did you like best today? Step in the class, watch what's happening, be engaged and involved. And you'll be able to pick up on some of those cues of emotional distress because our kiddos are anxious. I have 2 kids in middle school right now. So you talk about anxiety, frustration. There's the sadness of not being with friends. There's a lot of emotional weight and baggage our kids are dealing with. So you first want to be attuned to it. Ask them those questions. And then as we go on throughout this conversation, I can talk about some of the other techniques that parents can use, but there's a lot of things that we need to first know that they're dealing with before we can actually address them. So that's step 1, is being attuned to them and asking them how they're doing.
And thank you for that. And if there's anybody else on the panel that wants to chime in, we're asking you all specific questions just because we're all in little different boxes. But if you want to chime in, feel free to chime in at any point to all the panelists involved.
Would suggest that if your child is struggling, contact the school, make sure your teacher's aware. We have counselors, we have mental health experts, we have a lot of support staff, and we have been really ramping up our SEL, our social emotional learning supports, because we realize that children and families are struggling. I mean, we all are. And so I would suggest you touch base and make sure your school knows that you need help.
I agree with Dr. Hill. That's very vital to collaborate and communicate with the school where your child attend, the teacher, the counselor, reach out, get some help. That's what we're here for.
Thank you. Thank you all. This next question is specifically for Dr. Reagan, but anybody else can also chime in as well. This is coming from Rebecca O. And she asks, how do you work on social skills with a child who is on the spectrum from home?
It's a little more challenging. Just recently seeing some of my patients in my office that are on the spectrum. That was a common question parents were asking. They were kind of relieved in a way that school will be opening soon because it is a challenge. And each child on the spectrum has different needs that, so it is definitely individualized. So when they are at home, really communicate with their teachers to find out what was effective before when they were in the classroom setting, so they can kind of continue those same techniques at home and reinforce those behaviors. And it's okay for parents some days, is like when it really is challenging, is just to take a break and say, okay, I'm doing the best I can. My child's doing the best I can. And it may not be perfect. They may show some regression today. We'll tackle again tomorrow, but really engage with your teachers. That's what we're, as pediatricians, as everyone else is saying, we know it's going to take a village, all of us working together to make this succeed.
Dr. Reagan, thank you.
And I would just like to tag on to that. There are a lot of resources out there for social stories, especially as we're starting to transition our students back into the classroom to help prepare, whether it's health and safety protocols with wearing a mask, social distancing. There are resources available. So I just encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher, and they can help provide those visual supports and some of the techniques we use within the classroom in order for you to work on the social skills at home, or even the preparation to bring back into the classroom.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have next question is from Kirsten A. And Kirsten A. wants to know, she actually says that I know that most districts want our students back in school. What can we as parents do to advocate to those who are preventing that in-person learning? That probably would be for anyone who is involved in any of the districts.
So actually, I've just had this conversation with several parents. In Alief ISD, we are currently 100% virtual since August 6th. So we've been at it for a couple weeks, and it is challenging for teachers and parents, and we do understand that. One of the things, I talked to this father about is that we are here to support you. How can we support you while we're currently closed, in the sense of our buildings are closed, but we are working virtually. But also to reach out to your child's teacher, reach out to your directors or coordinators that may be supporting. And we do hear you. We hear your voices. And my motto is that I am your child's voice. I'm here to support, and we need to be one team together.
Thank you. And this sort of piggybacks the next question. It comes from Robin. This is for Deer Park ISD. What are you doing to ensure that parents of students with disabilities are involved in decision-making about their students' education right now?
Well, at this particular point, a lot of our teachers are reaching out directly to contact the parents. We are doing an early phase in for our specialized programs. So they're reaching out to the parents to check on needs, to check about transportation, to make sure that they're interested and willing to have their child attend a little earlier than when we start on September 16th. So we are reaching out and having conversations with parents to make sure that they're involved And of course, the decision really is going to be up to the parent to make that. But as a district, we know that our students really thrive and learn better when we're in direct face-to-face instruction.
And Christine, we're doing something similar in Fort Bend ISD. I mean, we have scheduled ARD IEP meetings and either having the full meeting or doing an amendment with the parents' permission and talking to them about what their thoughts are about returning their students. We do have a soft start, so we have about 800 students starting this coming Monday, and those decisions were based on, ARD committee recommendations and parent input. And so as we go through that process starting Monday, we'll be serving those students in a face-to-face environment. And again, I think a lot of what it's about is communication. If you're frustrated because you don't feel like you're involved in the process, contact the teacher, contact your special ed director. The folks here, like sometimes we don't understand what's going on and teachers may be overwhelmed. You can always reach out to your special ed director through email. You can find our names on the websites and we can try to resolve a problem if the campus is not able to do that.
This next question comes from Tanya H., and this is really for anyone with all the districts. Very specific question, but one that certainly needs to be asked. What additional procedures and resources should the districts provide for staff and students in special needs classrooms for children who require personal care services such as toileting and feeding, or who may even have bodily secretions, for example, saliva, that the assistance of staff members can assist with?
So I'll take the lead on that just briefly. We are providing our teachers with gloves, with PPE equipment, shields, face masks, those types of things, cleaning supplies. We understand that that these students have specialized needs, but we're taking all the precautions that we can to ensure the safety of not just the students, but our staff as well, because their social emotional well-being is just as important as our students.
Absolutely. And we are doing basically the same thing. We're not at to the point where we're bringing students back. We've even worked on training videos for our staff. So they have to go through safety or health kind of protocol training on either toileting, diapering, those kind of personal care services to ensure that they are following proper protocol as well. And then we have signs posted as reminders and visuals as well.
Thank you. This next question is simply coming from a mom, just an anonymous question. So whoever wants to respond, please do. Many special education kiddos spend years working on skills that are easy for their peers to master. This past hard work has been challenged during COVID, leaving many students facing the scary reality of regression, or even worse, losing skills completely. What are you doing to support these kids, and is what you're doing enough?
Well, I'll take that in Fort Bend ISD. One of the things that we're doing compared to the spring is that us, like a lot of districts, have a complete new online platform. So we are really ramped up our instruction on the online environment. And so, for example, for a child with dyslexia, we can do a lot of synchronous direct instruction through the online that we really probably didn't do as much or do as well in the spring, because we were just jumped into that so quickly. So we've spent a lot of time preparing. We've also, that's one of the reasons why we are offering face-to-face instruction, because we do know that there's some students who need that direct instruction who didn't benefit. But ultimately, what's going to happen for all of us is that when we get students back and we're able to determine their present levels of performance and gather some data on the students, we're going to have ARD meetings and we're going to individually discuss and determine, are there additional supports that children need in order to be successful? And those compensatory type services, it'll be difficult to determine those until we're able to get students back and assess where they are. But in Fort Bend, and I know that, my neighboring friends here, we're going to do what's right for kids and we're going to do what's right for families. And so we're going to have those meetings and those individual discussions and put the supports needed to help kids that have missed out on instruction and need to be caught up.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Dr. Hill. We too in ALEAF have ramped up our instructional practices and expectations for both teachers and students. You know, most of the area was on spring break and never really came back. We were about to go on spring break. So our word this year is pivot. We've been pivoting since March, and we are continuing to build skills for students and teachers and give them the support that they need. We're going to continue to reach out to families. If you are feeling stressed over a student's schedule or expectations, reach out to the teacher, talk to the campus principal, and we are here to work with you and collaborate so that way your student is making adequate progress.
And I agree with Dr. Hill and Nicole as well. We were fortunate in Deer Park. We're a much smaller district than both Fort Bend and ALEAF. We did offer face-to-face for extended school year services, and we offered that as an option. So hopefully that will remedy some of the regression. Hopefully we won't see as much of that. But we have definitely ramped up our services as far as the expectations for teachers, for paraprofessionals, for therapists to meet time, and looking at goals and objectives. It's much different in the fall than it was in the spring. So I think we're all on the same page. We just want to make sure we're doing the best that we can for our students and meeting their needs.
This next question is for Dr. Lewis. And, you know, we're not just talking about the kids, also parents, everyone involved in these conversations we've been having. And Mary L. asks, how important is it for parents to care for themselves right now as they work to support their child?
Oh, Keith, Mary, that's an excellent question. It's imperative. There's research that shows that 45% of adults, mental health is poorer now than it was before COVID. So that means that you have teachers and you have parents that are functioning at lower levels of emotional well-being, working with our kiddos. So it is absolutely imperative that the adults in their world take care of themselves first. We've heard the saying, put your mask on first, right, before you assist others. What happens if grown-ups don't do that? Then the children are going to reap the negative impacts of that. Because if you're frustrated, if you're depressed, if you're highly anxious, if you're amazingly stressed, you don't have that which to give that child, especially one who may have special needs or has additional needs and services that they require. You won't have the bandwidth to provide that. So I'm encouraging all adults, teachers, administrators, parents, do your work first. That means take care of you, take time out. We need time outs, color, go breathe, meditate, do some puzzles. There's a lot of things that we can do as adults to care for ourselves, but it is an absolute must. It's just as important as what we do for our kids. We have to do it for ourselves first.
I completely agree. Parents, y'all are rock stars. I think that goes without saying that educators, parents, like what you guys are doing right now is amazing work. You definitely get a pat on the back. So I'm glad that you said that, Dr. Lewis. This next question is for Dr. Reagan. Dr. Reagan, can you speak to the challenges that remote learning has on a student's social and emotional health and the importance of social connection in a child's development during adolescence?
Sure. So although remote learning, can help with the academic component of education, we know schools offer so much more when it's in person. That social interaction really is critical to their development, for them to learning, their own who they are, to develop as a person, especially as adolescents transition from being the child world to the adult world. It really is important and critical for these kids to have that opportunity to interact with their peers and with their teachers as they progress into that adult world and learning how to transition. So it's vital to their development. We know, but we want to get there in a safe way and make sure everyone is comfortable with it.
And can I add something to that, Christine?
Please.
Something that I'm encouraging, because I'm a parent of 2 teenagers. And so that social piece, y'all know that's major in teenage years. And so I've encouraged my kids to find creative ways to connect to friends. They have Zoom calls, FaceTime, those kind of things. We even having paint parties with friends, all on Zoom, finding creative ways. We had the drive-by celebrations, as birthdays and things like that to keep us all safe. far as our health, but their emotional well-being for social connection is major. Children can go into a great depression because they are losing that connection. It's like being in a world with people, but there's no people, right? Because you can't touch anybody. So it's major for their emotional well-being. So I'm encouraging parents to find creative ways to connect your kids to other children in a virtual way to keep us all safe, but as much as we can, definitely do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. This next question comes from Cassandra M. Really, anyone can jump in and answer this one. With children, especially young children, and those with special needs, it might be hard to keep a mask on all day. I think a lot of us realize that. What are the area districts doing to help ensure children will keep the masks on while at school?
You want to go ahead, Pam?
Go ahead, I'll come in after you.
Well, I was going to say, for our students, whether they're, 4 or 5 years old or where they're possibly they have some cognitive challenges and they're older, but still they struggle with the mask. We're using social stories to teach them, like Nicole mentioned a little bit earlier, which is a strategy to teach a child about a task. And so those are some strategies we're doing. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if a child can't keep their mask on because of their disability, we're going to work through that. That's one of the reasons why our staff are provided with all the different safety and PPE equipment. We're not going to, we're going to be sensitive to our kids, and we're going to work through that. So we recognize that they may not be able to do that well, and in time they may, get better at it, but we're not going to ostracize them because they can't wear a mask in a classroom. We're going to be sensitive to the situation.
Yeah, and we did some summer testing, and we provided video and a social story regarding PPEs and face masks and how to wear them and why people wear them. Our district nurses developed a video regarding what somebody would look like with or without, and have shared that, and parents can access that. But social stories are going to be key, maybe building up tolerance. And if somebody can wear it, but also take breaks from the face mask, have face mask break time. Those are all strategies that the teachers are going to use to help students. And of course, we know that students, due to sensory issues, may not even be able to tolerate a mask. And we understand that, and we're going to work with those students regardless.
Thank you. We're also getting several comments from the folks that are on this call tonight. So again, for those who are on this call, if you have a question, you can type it in the comments section, or you can also use the raise your hand feature if you want to speak directly with one of the panelists. This question comes from Tashina Williams. She's on the call right now. She asks, how can I help my child that is withdrawn and quiet?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd like to start with that one if I could. That's a great question. So when I said earlier, listen to your children, ask questions. And so I guess, I don't know if she wants to have a dialogue or not, but I guess one of my questions is that a normal and typical behavior? Is that something new that just occurred? Is that just as school has returned? If this has been your child's normal emotional space, and that's their personality, is they're more quiet, then maybe there's less concern than if it's something that just all of a sudden happened. And I say less concern because it's been normal for their personality, but we also don't want them to lose touch because now we've lost touch and connection as well too. So I encourage you to find creative ways to help your child stay connected in safe ways, because there are children who are withdrawn because they're anxious. And we need to ask them questions to find those things out. There are children who are withdrawn because they're sad or depressed. And so you may need to have possibly some professional evaluation if this becomes a major problem that interferes with their ability to do the academics, to interact socially at all. If they're not doing it at all, then maybe we need to take a look at that. If that's a problem, that is something that's new that's happening. But again, this is where you talk to your child and find out the source of the withdrawal behavior and that kind of thing, and then seek resources or help if you need to beyond that.
Yeah, and for Deer Park, if parents are having trouble with their children's anxiety, inability to connect socially, reach out to the campus counselor. We have campus counselors that have great training that are there to support the parents as well as the students.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. One thing that we've also been working with some of our more withdrawn or even socially just not wanting to get onto the Zoom meeting or their synchronous time of teachers meeting with the student before class to prepare. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So kind of that preparation in order for the child to fully participate in the synchronous or the live lessons may help decrease anxiety, or it may be, through counseling goals that we're going to work on. Okay, today you're going to ask a question, or, write down your questions, and then you can work with your teacher, your special education and class support teacher after. Those kind of things are what we're doing also to support students who may be more withdrawn and less likely to participate during those live lessons.
All right, and a question from Tracy Willis, very similar, but in her case, it doesn't sound like her son is withdrawn, but overwhelmed perhaps. Her question is, she says she's having a hard time with her son who has ADHD and the 1 hour classes specifically. She asked, what are some suggestions? She thinks that he's overwhelmed and also just kind of mentally checking out.
I'll start with that one. I think it's really important that, this is one of the things that within the IEP or the ARD that we do have those accommodations where kids can take breaks when they're overwhelmed. And so I think it's important for the parent to reach out to the child's teacher and let them know there's a lot of strategies we can do. We can let the child go into a break room. We can let them, at the end of the day, if the child's really overwhelmed, take a break from the computer, put it down and walk away. And if you have to do that for a few minutes and let the child have a minute of peace using some, even if it's just some mindfulness, some wellness, some breathing, some deep breathing, anything to get them refocused, I think that's important. And I think teachers are going to be flexible, particularly when you go back and you talk to them and let them know that he had to take a break. And I do know that teachers are really working hard to design instruction so we don't have an hour straight of someone talking, so that you have instruction built in where you have breakout groups, where you have time to write and to think and to not be just like this the whole time, because I think that I would have a hard time for 1 hour paying attention, and so we all need those breaks built in.
Yeah, and other strategies that I've seen our teachers utilizing include it might just be a visual reminder. I know in a lot of the Zoom sessions, you can do a thumbs up or a high five, kind of just to focus the child's attention back, but also some sensory kind of fidget toys. I mean, I have a rubber band on my wrist that I constantly play with. So other kind of squishy balls, Velcro, those kind of strategies can also be utilized within the home to help the student stay focused.
And the other thing just to remember is if this is a child who also has been on medication for the ADHD, from being away from school for a while, I know several of my patients have commented they kind of had stopped taking their ADHD medicine. So it may be time to talk to their doctor about, is it time to adjust their medication or figure out what the right medication is for their child now that things are going back to this new normal.
And the other thing too that I think about when children are overwhelmed, when we say taking breaks, it's leaving the space that they're in. It might be going outside, getting some fresh air, a change of scenery, even using some apps. And a lot of times grown-ups think about apps, but these apps can help kids too. There's Calm, there is the virtual Hope Box. There's lots of different apps that you can use that have calming meditation and mindfulness things on them that kids can also benefit from as well.
Thank you all so much for that. We actually have a video question from a viewer who is on the call. Her name is Talina. Talina, give us just a quick second. We will unmute you and then you'll be able to address your question. So just give us a quick second and then you'll go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I was wondering what platforms are you all using to provide teletherapy services as well as intervention groups to the students?
In Fort Bend ISD, we use Microsoft Teams, and that is the way. And we can do breakout sessions, we can do one-on-one, we can do telehealth. Our Speech Pass and our some of our psychologists are doing counseling and therapy sessions through the Microsoft Teams in that format.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
Okay, in Deer Park, we're using Teams as well. We also, our speech therapists, some of our psychologists, we have Zoom Education, which is FERPA compliant, that we are utilizing those platforms as well. So Teams works great. And then for some of our therapists, we're using Zoom Education.
Yeah, and A-Leaf, we're using Zoom Education as well. We're as our primary platform for our synchronous learning, but then also for our telehealth, whether it's speech therapy, our counseling, our occupational physical therapists are also meeting with their students for sessions virtually, a lot of consultation with parents as well in order to make sure students' needs are met.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one? If not, we have another video question. This one comes from Soledad Lara. So Soledad, if you could just, we're going to unmute your mic, give us half a second, and then you'll be able to ask your question.
Hello. I have a question for students who are transitioning from elementary to middle school. What kind of assistance can we offer the students and the parents for how the classes are going to change for them? For example, my daughter now has art and dance class. What kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Now I forgot it. Support will those teachers who don't normally teach special needs students have in those type of classes?
Well, I'll start, Soledad, and thank you for that. I mean, it is a hard transition when you go from elementary to middle school, and oftentimes, whether you actually had someone from the middle school at your ARD meeting back in the spring, or whether they're just talking outside of an ARD meeting, I think some of the best ways to prepare are the teacher, the teachers and the parents. I mean, the people that know the student the best, giving that information to the new teachers. So at your middle school, you're probably going to have a special ed teacher that could be a case manager that works with all of the general ed teachers and those out classes that you described, like art and dance and music that they go to. And the special ed teacher, can work with that general ed teacher and make sure they understand the IEPs and make sure they understand what to do. And then also, I think it's really important that we do some preparation with your own child about you're going to be changing classes. It's going to look a little bit different than it did in elementary, and help them understand that, because in our district, you might go from elementary, to having maybe 2 teachers. And if you have some out classes, maybe a little bit more, but maybe 7 different periods in middle school. And so that may look a little different this year with the pandemic and how schedules are working out. But I think it's important that, you help prepare for those transitions, and your teacher can help you with that too.
And I agree with Dr. Hill wholeheartedly. The other thing that we're doing in Deer Park is we're phasing in gradually. Kids, students, like going from 5th to 6th, they might have a day on the campus themselves where they can get acclimated and can get support from the special education team as well. And then really it is communicating as a parent, communicating the needs of your child with your special education teacher to ensure that the general education teachers are understanding of the accommodations and modification and needs of your individual child.
Absolutely, I agree. And it's hard because I don't know if your child will remain virtual or will be going back face to face. But in a virtual world, which my own children are in, plus the students and teachers I'm supporting in A-Leaf, we're 100% virtual. So they're starting a new school, new teachers, everything's new, and they're virtual. They can't even walk the building and get used to it. So I definitely understand your concerns. But again, communication, preparation, visual schedules or planners, all of those kind of strategies help when you're looking at a transition year.
Thank you all for chiming in on that one. This next question is coming from Barbara H. This is sort of an open-ended question. What are the most effective practices for Zoom instruction for supporting students with disabilities? I know this is a challenge for a lot of families who have special needs children trying to sit in front of the computer and learn virtually.
For me, it's doing it in small segments. It's also making sure that you're following a protocol, that maybe the teacher has given you directives as to, you're there to assist, giving you some maybe demo videos on how you can best assist the child during virtual learning. Make sure that the area where you're working with the child is quiet and calm. Those are all things that can help during a virtual session.
And then to provide the specialized supports during virtual instruction is another challenge on top of just the regular lesson. So we're utilizing breakout rooms to where special education teachers can meet individually or in small group with students that may need additional supports. But that's not just special ed students. It might just be students requiring interventions, or reteaching of the concept. So breakout rooms are a great way within Zoom for that specialized instruction. And then, like I talked about before, the advanced supports, preparation prior to lessons. Many of us are using learning management systems, many districts, in which teachers are loading material for the week. So it's being prepared for class so the students familiar with vocabulary or concepts that are going to be taught.
Front loading is really helpful for our students with disabilities, making sure they have access to what's going to be happening so that they know what's going to take place so that they're prepared and ready to go. So that front loading is really important.
Okay, this next question comes from a viewer who asks, how can we ensure safety for students and staff when students who can be physically aggressive, spit, or bite do not have to wear PPE?
I think that's a great question, because I know a lot of our staff are asking, how do we handle some of our students that do have more physically aggressive behaviors? So first of all, one of the things that we do in our district, and I know, my friends do it in their district, is we really work on de-escalation techniques and trying to do everything we can ahead of time to prevent that aggression and those behaviors like spitting and acting out. But if they do happen, we are training our staff on, how to make sure that they could continue to have their PPE on. Just like universal precautions with bloodborne pathogens, we're always following a certain procedure in case that there's blood that's exposed. We're going to be doing the same thing. So with our face shields, if we know we have students who spit and that have other aggressive behaviors, then we're going to be wearing masks, face shields. We're going to have gloves. We're going to be having extra cleaning supplies in the room and be cleaning more often. We're also going to be probably, moving some of the other students around when these things happen so that we have enough room to interact with the child and help de-escalate the child to keep everybody safe.
And it's going to be vital for the staff that are working with the child to know what potential triggers are that can set the child off. That's really important to know. So knowing those and what works best for each individual child, it's different for every child, is different. So what are the techniques that are preventative and also calming to de-escalate?
Okay, thank you. We have an anonymous question that's being asked. It's kind of a long one, so Keith and I are going to split it, but I'll start. It says, many families feel that they are having to accept a watered down or less robust IEP so they can at least get their child some support. By nature, many goals in an IEP are hard to accomplish given the current circumstances, but it doesn't change the fact that a child still needs that intervention. For example, a child with autism that has a BIP requiring physical redirection during elopement, or a child that has a social goal in their IEP to engage with their peers and initiate a conversation. These are critical parts of many children's IEPs, and many kids need these tough to accomplish goals and interventions for them to succeed. What do you have to say to these families? And I know it's a long one, but this is what this mother is asking.
So I'll go ahead and start. That's a great question. And it's one we talk about amongst ourselves, amongst our peers, and to teachers all the time, because behaviors change in the virtual environment. They may look different. And so we need to plan for the student based on all circumstances. So as far as accepting a watered down IEP, I would go back to the student's present levels of performance. How is the student performing? Look at the evaluation. The evaluation is the cornerstone of a student special education program. So begin with the evaluation. What does the evaluation tell you? And then how does that drive the current data? And then look at those IEPs. And if you feel that it's watered down, have that conversation. What are your concerns? Bring your concerns to the table. What information do you provide? Because it's a collaboration. It's not just, this is what we're doing. It's supposed to be a collaboration between parents and the school. And so I just encourage parents to talk with your campus in the ARD meeting in order to look at what services. Now, in a virtual world, it may not be possible to address elopement because the child's not physically with the teacher, but what other behaviors can we do? How can we, like we've been saying, front load, how can we teach strategies for the student to stay either at the computer or to engage in the lesson?
Yeah, and I would just add that even though many schools are virtual right now, I mean, I know in Fort Bend, we started last week and we started this week. It seems like it's been weeks. We just started this week, all virtual, and we start next week with some of our face-to-face kids. But I think it's important to talk to your school because we are providing, some of the districts are still providing in-home and parent training for students if they need that and for families. Whether they do that in person in the home or they do it virtually, we're still working to give parents strategies to work with their students in the home. And then also, I think that to give the teachers a little grace when you get started, we just started school, and I think it's going to take us a couple of weeks to work out some of the kinks to ensure that we do work on behavior plans, that we are giving reinforcements to kids during the day. You can do that virtually. But it might take a little time for us to work those kinks out and just to, again, communicate with your teacher. If you don't feel like the child's needs are being met and that your services are not as good as they were back when you were face-to-face, let the teacher know. And I think that we can work through those things.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And that is my theme this year is grace and forgiveness. Teach with grace and forgiveness. I think that's vital because we all are on the same page. We want what's best for every child, and that's why we're in this business. But I think it's also very important to collaborate and communicate. If you feel that your child is not meeting those, getting the needs that they deserve, meeting their needs are not being met, that it is vital that you communicate that with the teacher and that you come back to a meeting and have a meeting to discuss what we can do to improve to make sure that your students' needs are being met.
And can I add something to that? I also have experience as being a special education counselor. And one of the things that I'm clear about right now is that parent responsibility looks completely different than it used to. And so absolutely the school has a responsibility, school councils have a responsibility, but parents do too. And so if we're not able to deliver those things virtually, what can you do at home with your child to support those same needs? I think parents really, many may be kicking and screaming doing this because you didn't have to necessarily do it as much before. But at this time, parents really have an obligation to step up and do some things that maybe you didn't have to do before, but now you do. If your kid has social issues, how can you help engage them in social activities? Like I said earlier, creatively, what are some things that you can do to help reinforce positive behavior? Use the BIP plan at home with your child. How can you do those things? So parents need to be a part of it and not just look to the school to provide all of these things. We're in a different world. The rules, I mean, the paperwork hasn't changed, but the way it's delivered definitely looks different. So parents need to work to help fill in some of those gaps for your child.
All right, we are really quickly getting to the end here, but I wanted to get Dr. Reagan in here just real quick before we close. And I don't want you to give too short of an answer, but we are pressed up for time. Real quick question. This was from Christina M.
Hang on, Keith, real quick. I think Dr. Reagan might have had to step off for a little bit. So if we have another question.
Okay. Very good. All right. Yeah. So she is not there. Okay. Well, actually with that, we don't want this window to close.
Yeah.
So it's 7:55. And I think, my goodness, I don't know where the time has flown, but I mean, what a tremendous and important conversation to have. We want to thank all of you who participated as part of this exclusive discussion. Dr. Hill, Pam McLean, Nicole Roberts, Dr. Reagan, Dr. Lewis. Thank all of you for your time and your insight. I know in the stories that we've been doing with our education team over the last few weeks, our special needs parents have had a tremendous amount of questions. And so we know we didn't get to all of them, but we are thankful that you were able to answer what you did.
Can I just add one thing, Keith, before we hop off?
Please.
I have created a tip sheet and resource sheet for parents who may need help with their kids. It's at backtoschoolin covid19.com, back the number 2 school in covid19.com. And there'll be resources there. I'm even offering free workshops from my practice for parents who need help coping with the mind, body, spirit, emotional stuff. It's completely free and they're offered through the end of August. So please visit backtoschoolin covid19.com. I'm here to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And also want to give the chance to the other panelists to make sort of a closing statement before we sign off tonight.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having us tonight. I just want to say, parents in the Fort Bend community, please visit our website. We have a lot of resources on our special ed website. I'm sure my colleagues do as well. And reach out to us if you have questions. Our ultimate job is to serve our children and to serve our families. And we need to hear from you if things aren't working. I can't, promise that we're always going to agree on things, but we're going to work hard and roll up our sleeves and try to meet you. So ultimately, it's about the students. So thank you so much tonight, Christine and Keith. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and for our district, we have a lot of apps that you can look at and resources on our website. So reach out if you're having concerns, reach out to myself, reach out to your campus department chair, the case manager for your special needs student. We are here to help you. We're all in this together. And as long as we go with grace and collaboration, I think that we can all be very successful for the benefit of all of our students.
And I would just like to close by thanking you for having us, all of us on the panel. I think it's been a great discussion. And ALEAF also, we do have our website. We've just updated. We do have a link to request support directly that comes to our office, and then we will connect you with the right person. There's also FAQs on there, resources for parents. But our theme for this year is Let's Bounce. So my goal is that we all bounce the right way for our students, because we're in this together, but we all have the same goal, and that's for students to succeed and to just transition back to the school as best as possible.
All right. Thank you all again, just so very much.
Yeah, we can't say thank you all enough for making the time. We truly understand the value of having these conversations, and to the viewers who tuned in, to the panelists that made time for this conversation, we just can't thank you enough here at KPRC, and just appreciate continuing this conversation in the upcoming days and weeks and months as we navigate this really interesting time. But to the parents, your rock stars, to the educators, thank you for what you do, and we appreciate this conversation tonight.
Yeah, and for any questions that were not answered, or if you have more, feel free to submit those to our website, click2houston.com. You can also check click2houston.com/back-to-school and look for information you still may have some questions about.
Yeah, so on that note, thank you all, and have a wonderful night, and good luck this school year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.